Welcome to Life Esteem, a program committed to deliver information that's important to you and your community. Your hosts are Nathaniel and Patricia Gadsden.
Hello and welcome to Life Esteem again. Always glad to have you as a viewer. Today we're going to talk to a dynamic writing team. They're both writers and authors, poets, all that good stuff. Jim McConky and Diana Diaz, husband and wife team. So glad to have you both here.
Very good
Yes,
to be here.
indeed. Jim and Diana have been frequent visitors, and I want to thank them so much, and not visitors, members of the Writers' Workshop on Friday nights down there at the Midtown Scholar. And we have a good time, and you bring in such class and scholarship. We really appreciate you coming in. Jim, you're an author of a book. You want to tell us a little bit about your book?
Yeah, it's called To the Far Side of Planet Earth. It's a memoir of my time in the Peace Corps in the 1960s.
Where?
And in India. And I was very pleased that it was a finalist in the Next Generation Indie Book Awards 2012 for multicultural nonfiction.
Wow.
Yes,
Wonderful.
yes. Okay.
As we see it up there on the screen now, so I believe people get a chance to see
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And Jim did an excellent presentation for the World Affairs Council of Harrisburg on this book and his experience, and we'll talk a bit more about that. And Diana Diaz. Diana has been a tremendous. Well, you're a writer, but also you promote the arts, because Diana has pushed all kinds of different arts events here in the Harrisburg area.
World Cultural Affairs.
World Cultural Affairs too. We'll talk about that. But also she, and I always remember this, back in the day, helped to started the Paul Robeson Center for the Arts, and I always thought that was a very special place for that very special time. So I just want to thank you both for coming on. Let's start with Jim and talk a little bit more about your book, and then let's go to Diana and talk about about your writing down, because you have a rich history as well. Jim.
Okay, well, the Peace Corps was really the most bizarre experience of my entire life. And it sort of, in writing the book, I was trying to give a sense of what the culture is, how to define the different cultures. And it took me about 35 years to figure out a way to do it. And I finally came down. I incorporated mythology and psychology into an anthropological approach. And that's kind of the way I worked out the description of culture, trying to make it understandable for people who haven't had experience with different cultures. It's kind of an adventure story in an exotic realm. It's got humor, it's got frustration, it's sort of the whole gamut of emotions, and so.
It's a really good, fascinating story when you tell it. I just thought your presentation was powerful. And you also spoke at the Midtown Scholar for the Writers' Workshop, and you did a presentation there as well. And I still want to see you, get to some other audiences, so we'll talk more about that. Yeah, but good stuff though. Yeah. And Diana, your poetry. How long have you been writing poetry?
Since I was 8 years old.
8 years old.
I remember my first poem.
Do you really? Oh man, that's beautiful.
When I was 8.
And you, how would you describe your style of writing as a poet? If there's
I
a style.
haven't thought about it.
Okay.
I don't really know.
So you just kind of write,
Yeah.
because you have such a beautiful voice in your writing. I just think it's fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you.
And you also have sort of an international flavor in your writing. At least that's my assessment of it all.
Well,
And both of you do really.
Yeah, that's probably because when I was growing up, my father worked in Europe and North Africa. So, and he traveled from country to country. So I had a very enriching and mind-altering experience living in different countries.
Okay.
So that's why I really enjoy the World Culture Club.
Yeah.
Well, talk about the World Culture Club that you do at Penn State, the Medical Center there.
Yeah.
Because that's been exciting, the type of things that you present and make available. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I co-founded that with Nukusha Nikaratha. That was 12 years ago. We co-founded that.
Okay.
And
The World Cultures Club.
the World
Yeah.
Culture
Mhm.
Club
Yeah.
of Central PA. It changed name in the middle, but
Okay.
it's the World Culture Club of Central PA.
Mm-hmm.
And that has been a wonderful experience because we've had wonderful presenters every month, the first Wednesday of every month. And this coming August is going to be a great program by Don Brown, who was an international consultant on global warming.
Uh-huh.
And that is going to be the first Wednesday of August. I think that's the 7th, but I have to check on that.
Okay.
The first Wednesday.
First Wednesday
And
of
it's
August.
always at the Hershey Medical Center in lecture room C on the 5th floor.
Okay.
And public is invited free of charge.
Oh, beautiful. Good, good, good. Mhm.
And some of the past presentations have been, give us some ideas of some of the other things you've done recently.
Oh my goodness, we've had wonderful presentations. Actually, we're going to have a great one on the value of education in September.
The value of education. Okay.
Yes, that's going to be a very, very good program by Behzad Sandieh, who is from Iran. And we have had some really wonderful programs.
I know you had Dr. Gil.
Clem Gilpin
Clem
Yes,
Gilpin.
gave
on
the
Brazil.
last one
Yeah, he did something on Brazil, I believe. He's out of Penn State.
on Brazil.
Yeah.
That's
and prior
right.
to him, you had a gentleman.
David Lay from
David.
the War College
Okay.
did a really good presentation on China,
That's
U.S.
right.
relations with China
China.
and the
Okay.
Pacific. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, these are the second Wednesday of each month.
The
And
first
they're-
Wednesday.
First.
First Wednesday of each month, and they're free of charge at Penn State Medical Center in lecture room C
That's right, on the 5th
on the
floor.
5th floor. Fantastic,
Yeah.
good. We got some.
That's how we met.
That's
The
how you
World
met.
Culture Club, yep.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's right, they're
right.
newlyweds. I mean, they've only been married about 4 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4 whole years.
4 whole years.
Yes, and he had the audacity, the first time he ever came, to tell me he wanted to do a presentation. I didn't know who he was or what he did or anything.
Right.
Yeah.
But I
you were
took a
glad
risk. I took a risk
took a
and said
risk.
yes.
Okay.
And look at how that paid off.
That- That's right.
Fantastic. Good
That's
stuff.
right.
And
Because
just- go ahead.
we had to work on it together. So that's how we sort of got to know each other.
Good stuff. Yeah, yeah. And now, Donnie, you've had a rich career in terms of writing, and I'm going to talk to Jim as well in terms of
Yeah.
things you've done. What were some of the positions you've held? I know that you've done.
Well,
a lot
I
of
was
varied
a
things.
staff reporter for a daily newspaper called The Mercury in Pottstown, PA.
Okay.
And I loved that. I loved writing and reporting. And
Yeah.
So I've always just continued writing.
So, what made you start the Paul Robeson Center for the Arts? I mean, how
Yeah.
did that come about?
Let me see. Now, how did that get started? There were a group of people who decided they wanted to start a cultural center. And they asked me if I would be the director, and I accepted.
Okay.
So we started at, I think you were part of that,
I absolutely
Nathaniel.
was. Yes, yes.
Yes, you
Enjoyed
were.
it. It was great. I just thought it was a great thing.
Yeah.
But you've done so many other things. We could talk forever about that. You know?
Well, how did it become Paul Robeson, though? Why was that the...
Well, actually, that became the Paul Robeson Center, and I believe that was partly because of Oliver Legrone,
Yes.
Okay.
who was a wonderful, wonderful
Oh, yeah.
sculptor,
Poet.
humanitarian, teacher, everything.
Everything.
And I think he was the one who really suggested
Paul Robeson.
that,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, yeah. And Jim, how about your background? What are some of the things you've done in your...
It's various. I grew up on a farm in Virginia. I majored in journalism in school, and one of the reasons it took me 35 years to write my book is I had to learn anthropology and study all those things on my own. When I came back from India, I went to work as a carpenter and did that for 15 years. And I worked for an organization that did sports and recreation for people with disabilities. I worked as a copy photographer. I worked in a print shop. So kind of a varied career.
Yeah, but all that kind of comes together in your writings, right? Is that all those
It helps,
experiences?
the varied experience is very helpful in writing. 'Cause
Yeah.
it gives you a lot of different things to draw on.
That's right. Yeah.
One of the things we talked about before we came on the show is that you're planning to go to Paris in September. And you said you have family
I do.
still there. So talk about that. You said you have family. Is that?
Well,
was
that is because I went to school and grew up part of my life in France.
Okay.
And therefore I married a Frenchman.
Okay. All right.
That's why my name is Carel.
Okay.
But unfortunately, he passed away shortly after we were married in an accident, which was devastating to me. But fortunately, I had his child.
Yes.
So I still have part of him
That's
with
good.
me, Alain, who goes back and forth to France, who
All
is,
right.
you know, French.
Okay.
So, and I have cousins there, and we love to go there. Yeah, Paris is a wonderful, wonderful.
I have to get
City.
there.
Yeah,
I've
we
actually
had to
been
get
there
there.
once, but it was like an overnight stay. I didn't really get a chance to experience it. Yeah, so.
Yeah, we definitely have to
Yeah.
do
But you also
that.
mentioned possibly going to Holland. Is that right?
I'd love to go to Holland. Yeah, while we're there this time, my mother was born in Holland, and I've never been, so I think it would be good to try to connect with the family that I still have there and
Right.
get at least a little bit of a feeling for where my mother came from. Of course, that was like 1910 or 1912, I think, when they
Right.
came to the States. So I'm sure things have changed there just the way they have everywhere else.
Like I said, when we meet on Friday nights, let me say to the viewing audience that we meet every Friday night at the Midtown Scholar, which is located right off of 3rd and Verbeck Street. Fantastic bookstore owned by Eric and his wife, the Pappenfuss. And it is just a wonderful community meeting place. But these two fantastic people come in and they read, and what I always get from you is that you love words. You love, poetry, you just love good writing. And it reflects in your presentations, but also that you're really well traveled and that you have a vast, let's say, reservoir to draw from in terms of experiences and stuff. What do you think? And I just want to ask both of you, what advice would you give to the aspiring writers who are watching this program, who want to get their book out? No matter how long it takes, who want to write that poem, that's going to capture the essence of what they're really trying to say. What would you say is what they need to do to be a disciplined, seasoned writer?
Disciplined, that's kind of hard because I'm not very disciplined myself, unfortunately. I'd like to be more disciplined. I think you really need to set aside a time in the day when you can just sit down and write. And I try to do that myself. I don't always succeed, but you write a certain amount and you end up building up volume that way. And stick to it. Well, my sister said she was amazed at the way I stuck to my book for all that time, but I said, actually, the book stuck to me. It wouldn't let go.
That's a good thing. Yeah, that's a good thing. And then you have, like you said, you have humor in it, but you also have very vivid images as you're reading. I can see myself in India, never been there, and it's like, wow. So how do you capture the imagery? How did you develop that voice? Was it just through reading more, writing more? What was it?
It was basically through writing. You just, get something and put it down on paper, and then you revise and revise and revise.
Okay.
As one person said, there's no such thing as good writing. There's only good rewriting.
I like that.
And so,
Like that.
Yes, that's really good. Yeah. And how about yourself, Diane?
Well, I think it's interesting that one of the ways that I enticed Mr. McConky to come and stay, I do have other people that stay in my home, guests, and I really sort of wanted him to come. And I held a carrot in front of his nose and said, if you come, you will have time to write your book. Because when he was with his sister, he was always working, doing other things.
Right, yes. Distracted, I understand.
I said, come and write your book.
And what was your discipline? What got you to write? And what keeps you writing? Because you
What
still
keeps
write
me
now.
writing?
Yeah.
I think that I express myself much better in writing than by talking.
Okay.
My thoughts just seem to flow out onto paper. So,
I kind of feel the same way about myself.
like that?
Okay. Yeah.
and to me, it's a therapy for me.
Uh-huh.
It helped me get my emotions under control or get them out, my feelings out.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
it's interesting you brought that up, Diana, because my great wonderful husband here wrote a book called Self-Therapy Through Writing,
Right.
and which truly expresses what you're saying. Now, I'm going to ask you about this poem you said you remembered when you were 8 years old. Do you still remember the poem?
Yeah,
Can you recite it?
I think so.
Yeah, let's hear that. I'd like to hear that.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
she has
remember
a book,
sitting on my bed up in the attic, and for some reason it just came to me. Little roses, pink and red, blooming in their garden bed. Something warm and breezes blow them over, dancing through the grass and clover. Winter came no more that day. That's what the little roses say.
Yeah, I
Oh,
liked
isn't
it.
that nice?
It's beautiful.
That was
haven't
my
done-
8-year-old poem.
8-year-old poem.
That's better than my 29-year-old. But thinking of such, I know that you brought some works with you. Would you mind reading a piece from that? And also, Jim, would you pick out a passage from your book that you could
Yeah, I
read
could.
to us? Okay. If, so why don't you both, find something that you maybe share so that our viewing audience can get a sense of, of your voice and your style of writing. And again, I want to invite everybody to come down to Midtown Scholar on Friday nights. It's every Friday night that we can muster from 7 to 9. It's always free and open, and you get a chance to meet some just great people. Just walk in, and we sit down and just simply share writings. Nothing magical about it, but the magic is within the words. And Jim and Diana just do a fantastic job of really bringing in tremendous words. Jim, looked like you found your passage there.
Yeah, this is kind of short.
Okay.
But, one evening, Krishna Reddy asked to borrow my camera. Requests to borrow everything from money to my Petromax to my wristwatch were an endless source of aggravation. No, I said. This he refused to accept. But how then? Their choicest rebuttal. What shall I do? On and on he went with pit bull tenacity for 45 minutes until he wore me down. Okay, I relented, but he'd have to buy his own film. He reminded me of his December 26th drama and again made me promise to come. My ashtray was too full and he dumped it on the floor. He left and never mentioned the camera again. Darn Krishna Reddy anyway. True, my house was swept daily, for which purpose Mustafa had added his grandmother to the payroll, but I'd bought the ashtray specifically so people wouldn't keep putting butts out on the floor. On December 22nd, I began my Christmas vacation. Several of us had taken a bungalow on the Bay of Bengal. It was a day of firsts, the first ride on my new bicycle, my first Telugu cinema, and Krishna Reddy having emptied my ashtray on the floor for the second straight day. The 22nd was the first day I emptied it there myself.
Good stuff.
That's good. Yes, it is.
Yeah, good visions. I like
Yes,
that.
I like that.
Yeah.
Again, you have to. We're going to have to get you to do another one of your, talks about
I'd love
your
to.
experience.
I'd love to.
And got to invite the public to come down and hear it because it is quite engaging, And Diana, I know you have some wonderful poetry. So, what would you like to lift up for us?
Yeah, I could read. This one is called Forest Morning.
Okay.
The night passes silently, slowly, seductively. Sleep is as elusive as time here in the dark womb of the forest. Velvet is the night here, while moon magic weaves soft shimmering spells through the leaves. I cannot sleep, curled on the soft damp ground, fitting my body to rock curves. Stars light years away fade, blend into dawn. Fingers of a forest day animate stilled forms around, and sound begins to stir the clay. The forest breathes. Among the silent, timeless shapes of ageless trees and gnarled vines, the twisted roots reach tendrils down into the infinite depth of the river bottom.
Wow, nice.
Very pretty. Yeah,
Yes,
very,
indeed.
very nicely said. Boy, oh boy. And so, you keep your passions flowing with writings, and I notice one of the other things you both do is that you read other people. Diane, I know you always lift up Will Pollard. who was one of the great poets from this area, and you talk about his writings quite a bit. And then, Jim, you've always brought in, like this past week, you had a book that you brought in, and you just kind of read some stuff out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So reading other people, you appreciate as much as your own writing, it
yeah.
seems.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So this is good stuff. It's almost a lost art for some folks. You know, they just don't seem to, you know, to read it all. You know, and that's kind of sad.
It is.
It is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that-
most certainly.
Yeah.
I
That's
just can't
sad.
imagine not having an opportunity to be able to read and stretch myself. And your imagination, I understand reading allows you to be more creative because it really starts those creative juices and really allows you to start feeling and thinking of other options and opportunities you may have.
Oh, and reading can take you places you could never go.
Absolutely.
You know?
You just visualize it and you're like, oh, you find yourself there.
Yeah.
Okay, on that shore or on that beach or in that, you know, various different options and places. But let me ask you in regard to, we were talking about your travels, and Jim said, Diana, that you are the world traveler, okay? That you truly have been to various many places. What's a place that you truly really enjoyed and just thought, wow, I'm so glad I had the opportunity to be here and to experience this?
Actually, I explained that because my father was working in Europe, that's why I was traveling to so many countries. And I loved every country I was in. But France is my second home.
That's your second home.
Yes, that's
Just
my
really, really appreciate
dearest
France.
love.
What is it about France? I haven't been to France, but
Well, I can
sell
tell
me
you.
on going to France.
I can tell you that when my father took me to France, and then he was working all day and I had nothing to do. And he said, well, maybe it would be good if you went back to school. And I said, that's a great idea. So we found a place. It was sort of like a French YWCA with a house mother, which is unusual in France. But there was about 60 people living there from all different countries. I was the only American.
Wow.
And they worked or they went to school. They were from all different countries. But they were so wonderful to me. They accepted me, and they just enjoyed teaching me French. They were just so great. I could never forget how wonderful they were to me, a stranger.
Right. Sometimes that's the best educational setting, just being able to learn from other people. It's not always just a formal education, it's just the interaction sometimes, right?
Yeah. So, you know, from then on, I always just thought French people, because of that experience, they were just great people.
Fantastic, yeah.
And I ended up marrying one.
Yeah. How long have you lived in this area, both of you, in central Pennsylvania and Harrisburg, whatever?
I used to come here when I was a little girl because my grandmother lived in Hummelstown.
Okay.
My grandmother and grandfather. And I ended up living in their house. That's where we live.
You live in their house now.
Yeah. Actually, she's the fourth generation of her family to live in that house.
That's
Great.
fantastic,
Yeah, I'm kind of new to the area, but I have to say that I like central Pennsylvania as well, or if not better, than any place I have ever lived. I really, the people just seem to be engaged with the area in a really positive way. So.
Good stuff, good stuff. I do too. I just think it's, you know.
Well,
It's
you
a great
give
place
us
to live.
all a wonderful opportunity, Nate, with your writers'
thank you.
workshop and everybody who loves writing and poetry and reading.
Yeah, I enjoy it very much.
We love coming.
Thank you so much. It's like you guys are like my second family here. Because it's just, you know, it's what we do on a Friday night. It's just a good time, you know. Yes, indeed. So, you know, when you think about, you know, things you want to do, you know, everyone has a bucket list and all that kind of stuff. I don't know where that ever came from, but the bucket list. But if there's something that you wanted to do with your writing, have you thought about a part 2 of your book, or maybe writing something different, Jim?
Actually, I have thought about a part 2, a part 2 and a part 3. I ended up having a nervous breakdown at the end of the book, and I wanted to sort of write how I dealt with that and how I kind of came out of it, and all the different philosophical changes that went on, because this had just opened up the world to an extent that in a way I just wasn't kind of able to deal with. It took me about 6 months to come out of that. So I wanted to write about that experience, and also I would like to write something that really deals with culture in a technical but more in depth than I was able to do it in the book. That's kind of the subtext here, but I'd like to be able so.
Good stuff. So you got some projects waiting for you then.
Yeah.
That's great. How about you, Diane?
Well, I think that living in another country changes your life, changes your whole perception and your philosophy.
Yeah,
And-
I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the one thing we've given you an assignment on is getting that book of poetry out. Because we all agree that it's like, you don't have a book of poetry? What? And so we're hoping that you will write a book, you know, a collection of your great works, because you have so much work that you've done over the years. And
That's
Jim, I know
on-
you're pushing on that. I hope you're already.
I am.
That's on my bucket
That's
list.
on your bucket list.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the things we have talked about doing, of course, is an anthology. And both of you have already contributed to that. So I did meet with a person, I'll mention her name, Janita Jackson, who does a lot of great work in the area. She produced and helped to publish Terry D. Most of you know her by Terry D. Washington, her oldest daughter, and she has had 2 very successful books out, and now some, what do you call those? The e-zines or whatever they call them, the e-books.
Oh,
Yeah, e-books, yeah, she's doing very well. But, you know, Janita lives right here in the area, and so I showed her the project, and she's very excited about trying to help us look at how to get that anthology out.
Great.
Because I think the writings that we have now are just great. The last anthology we did was like in 1998. So it's now time to get some new voices in there and
Absolutely,
add
yeah.
to it. And you two will be the first to go in. Because you were the first to contribute, you know. Yeah, so I really appreciate that. You know, but do you have any projects on board other than, you know, like I said, we're pushing you to get that poetry book done, but what other things are you doing?
Well, mostly, I think my main preoccupation is the World Culture Club
Yeah.
of Central PA. Is
Yeah.
getting speakers and programs and
Publicity.
doing the publicity
Yeah.
and for all of that.
And I heard you
Yeah.
mention that you may not stay there real long after, I mean, but you're really the spark and the
I've
spirit
been
of that.
12 years,
Yeah.
you know, and I kind of would like to work on some of my own projects, like my getting the poetry book done and
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah, because it is time consuming to keep doing the World Cultures Club
Yeah.
and everything. But I noticed how everybody was so deflated when you said it was, oh no, because you know, the two of you make it go. And so, you know, you have to,
But we have great board members, and you're one.
Well, I just got on board. I'm not
Yeah.
great yet, but I'll see what I can do. But you do have a nice board. You have a really
Yeah,
good
we
board.
do.
Yeah,
They should
so
be able to carry it
carry
on.
on the torch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they will, because you've done a tremendous job, both of you.
Thank
Well,
you.
you know what? We've run out of time, but I do want to thank you both for coming on and sharing just a piece of your world with us, your writing world. They're great writers, folks. They do a wonderful job. Remember, Jim McConky is, you know, was to the far side of the earth, right?
The
Of
far
planet.
side of planet
The
Earth.
far side of
Yes.
planet Earth. You got to read it. It's a fascinating read. And also Carel-Diaz, who does a tremendous job as a poet. You know, come out and join us on a Friday night and get a chance to meet both of them at the Midtown Scholar. And you'll be, you know, just blown away by their literary voices, okay, from 7 to 9 at the Midtown Scholar. Thank you so much for watching.